Greetings and thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm very much excited today because I want to speak to something that has actually been trending in the social media platforms. I saw it on ZNBC News. I also equally saw it come through from one of the tabloids in the Zambian press, which is News Diggers. And to be specific, this is where the Minister of Health actually was complaining on the issues of the delays in the delivery of some ambulances, and thereafter these ambulances actually also equally being awarded even more. So basically, this is what I want to address today, and I want to focus on one very key important topic, which is actually the issue of contract management. And as we all know, effective contract management is very crucial in the sense that it really helps us to ensure that contracts are properly managed and executed and all parties meet their obligations. So in meeting the parties' obligations, those are obligations of a procuring entity as well as the obligations of the supplying entity. So what are the key elements that definitely needs to be looked into whenever you are dealing with a contract or a procurement contract as a procuring entity? What are some of the things that you should be able to look out for and what you should be able to look into clearly? So number one is the issue of the establishment of the contract itself. So under the establishment of the contract, one of the key important issue that you need to ensure that the contract must be able to have clear objectives in the sense that you need to define them. You need to define your scope. You need to define also your deliverables. So in this particular case of what is happening at one of the ministries that the minister actually was alluding to, we must be able to look at what were the objectives, what was the scope, what was also the deliverables of that particular contract. Then we need to look at the issue of comprehensive contract documentation. So what documents are accompanying this particular contract? What are some of the requirements that were put in place to ensure that all the contractual obligations are met and the conditions of the contract are actually adhered to, and basically defining the obligations. Another key important aspect at the stage of contract establishment is what we call risk assessment. So identify potential risks and develop mitigation strategies as a procuring entity. That is very critical. You cannot enter into a contract or you cannot execute a contract without taking due diligence, without understanding exactly what the risks are involved and how you are going to mitigate those particular risks. Then the other aspect, of course, in this particular instance is what we call contract administration. And under contract administration, you need to have a clear contract review and approval establishment, where you look at the process on how these contracts will be reviewed over time and how they will be approved, and how the milestones are going to be approved. Then we are looking at also issues of contract registration. This is maintaining a central contract registry. Why is the registry important? Because whenever you are going back to issues of looking at the objectives and also referring to your risks, looking at the milestones and reviewing the contracts, you need this centralized particular registry. And then communication plan. Very important. You cannot enter into a contract without having a clearly defined communication plan. For example, you heard the minister complaining so much with regards to the delays in the procurement process. But the question that remains to be answered is how has the communication been between the procuring entity as well as the supplying entity, as it were, and what are some of the communication issues that are surrounding that particular aspect, and where is the gap? So it is very critical, and we must ensure that at every point when we're entering into this contract, these issues are actually clearly clearly defined. Another aspect that is very key and very important is what I call a contract performance management system, where you look at the performance matrix of these particular contracts that you're entering into. You establish key performance indicators to measure the contractor's performances. This is where now, as you are doing your review, as you are doing your monitoring, as you are doing your contract administration, or yes, so you'll be looking at all those issues, the performance matrix. So without having proper performance matrix, this is where you find that contracts actually begin to fail. And then you need to have regular reporting from the officers that are involved. For example, if it's a procurement officer, it's a procurement manager, they need to be giving updates. For example, if the deliverable, one of the deliverables were that this particular contract must be delivered within a given or specified period of time, and that time something has not happened. Remember, we talked about communication. You go back to this to the officers involved or the officers in charge to actually be able to help and ensure that they report and they update and make follow-ups as well as to why the delay has happened. You don't need to take the Home Minister to come and begin to look at these issues. So it's very, very important. Issues of resolutions. Establish the process of resolving issues and disputes that may arise in the contract. Is a delay because of any dispute that may have risen? Is the delay because of any issues that has affected? How do we resolve this? It also comes back to issues of communication. How do you deal with this between the procuring entity as well as the supplying entity? Then issues also of compliance. Compliance becomes very key. Compliance to what? Compliance to the scope of work, compliance to the objectives, compliance to to the delivery times that were agreed upon, the terms and conditions of the contract. So compliance monitoring becomes also key by the procuring entity. So the procuring entity must ensure that it monitors the procuring entity must also ensure that there is continuous compliance monitoring to monitor the contract compliance with the contract terms and conditions, regulations that are also defined in that particular contract. Audit and insurance issues. What were the issues that insurance issues that were put in place? For example, where the performance guarantees, where the performance bonds effective, and all those issues. So all those are key issues to look at when you talk about the contract compliance and governance issues. Also, since we're talking about governance, you can as well talk about the whole governing framework that actually governs this particular contract and how you're going to manage it. So it is very, very key, and I must emphasize that these are some of the things that now we need to begin to question ourselves, and we need to begin to ponder upon in understanding why such a contract, why such a procurement had to end the way it is, to a point where the minister in charge of the ministry can actually even begin to complain. So under the contract closure and renewal, these are now the processes that comes after the delivery has been done, the scope of work has been met, the milestones have been met. You're looking at now contract closure process. How is it going to be closed off? Okay, lessons learned. So this is where also I want to dwell on, because it's very, very important to understand, to say, okay, fine, this is where we are as a people, this is where we are as a team, and now this is what this ministry has experienced, and any other ministry or procuring entity can actually be able to experience. And therefore, what are the lessons that we can be able to pick from here? What are the future issues that we can learn from and be able to ensure that we improve going forward? Then we also look at issues of contract renewal. When you're talking about contract renewal, establish a process of contract renewal for termination. So basically, the contract renewal aspect comes into being when there has been performance from the other party. In an event that there hasn't been really performance, it becomes very difficult for you to be able to ensure that you renew this particular contract. So as you are managing that and as you are executing those particular contracts in such a manner, we must also appreciate one of the most important aspects that I want to speak to are the contract management tools and technologies. because these are the ones that are going to help us as procuring entities, as procurement officers, as procurement managers, to ensure that contracts are executed successfully, they are delivered successfully. Okay, so what are these tools and technologies that we can use? There are quite a number of contract management softwares out there which we can be able to utilize in order for us to streamline our processes. And it's very, very important that at the time where we are, with the coming in of Smart Zambia and many other technological advancement in our field, we can be able to utilize these particular tools. We can look at electronic contract repositories that maintain these are actually like the clouds based issues, and you can set reminders that will be able to prompt you at what stage this contract is supposed to be, when you're monitoring and reviewing the contract, what is happening at this particular stage and what is not happening. It helps you so that what you can forget humanly, you can actually track it using these electronic contract repositories. You can look at automated reports. So use the automated reports tools to track contract performance. It will definitely be able to help you. So organization must begin to shift their attentions to that as well. And lastly, but not the least, very important to my presentation today is what I call the contract management training, providing these particular trainings to every contract manager and stakeholder. Remember, when you're doing a procurement of such a nature, there are quite a lot of stakeholders that are involved. Each stakeholder must be able to understand their responsibilities. They must be able to understand their obligations and how they come in and where they end. And they should be able to ensure that every aspect of their responsibility is actually managed and is met. Okay, then you can actually look at contract management certifications, which are usually done by the project managers that we appoint to these particular contracts. How are they going to certify these particular contracts and everything? And then you look at continuous professional development for all the stakeholders and officers, not only the procurement people, but everyone that is involved in the contract management process, to ensure that we foster continuous professional development in contract management. This can never be overemphasized if we are going to have successful contracts that are not going to fall short of our expectation, that are not going to fall short of the government's expectations and the organizations that we are serving. And these are very, very critical and very important, because they will be able to help us achieve and manage these contracts through minimizing all risks, effective delivery, and maximizing on the benefits that we need to maximize on the issues of contracts management. And I thank you so much for having joined me today in this particular presentation and broadcast, and we'll be expecting to be having more of such nature in our in the future, so that we ensure that together we build a professional image, or a profession that actually people are going to have confidence in, that is going to be a partner with government in development, without actually being the bottlenecks, or without actually being a people that are a thorn to the development of the nation and to the development of the organizations that we are working for. Thank you so much. My name's Richard Mumbi, and thank you for joining me, and I will see you in the next broadcast. Thank you.